Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for joining us here at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos 2026. I'm Shereen, Bhan, the moderator for this session, also the managing editor of CNBC TV 18, CNBC's operations in India. It's great to see so many wonderful people here, and it's great to have a panel here to discuss a topic that is getting a lot of attention and mind space here in Davos. We're talking about corporate ladders, AI reshuffled, but in the context of Davos 2026, Reshuffled has taken on a whole new meaning. We're, of course, waiting for President Trump to arrive, and it could take on an entirely different meaning here in the context of what happens with headlines. But I want to dive into the issue at hand. I think there is palpable anxiety about what AI is going to do in the near term, in the medium term, and in the long term to the jobs market. If you take a look at the World Economic Forum's jobs report, while there will be disruption, it does say that there will be net growth as far as jobs are concerned, at least at this point in time. The irony also is that while we talk about a catastrophic impact on entry-level jobs, there are sectors where we continue to see significant gaps. There aren't enough skilled workers. The WEF in its report also talks about sectors like healthcare, where the gap is almost 11 million. You don't have 11 million people to service the healthcare needs. So that is also the irony that we are dealing with. But there's a lot of questions on what companies need to do, what companies are doing today, and whether that is adequate to upskill workers. What happens to entry-level workers? Do we need software engineers anymore, or is code going to be written by large language models and generative AI? I think that's what we intend to dive into. This is going to be a free-flowing conversation. I would appreciate it if you do have questions, then do engage with our panel here. Do keep your questions short. We will come to you in just a second. But let's get things started by introducing our panelists to you. Sarah bint Yousif Al-Amiri, the Minister of Education of the United Arab Emirates. Thank you very much for joining us. Christopher Pissarides, the Regius Professor of Economics at the London School of Economics and Political Science from the UK. Andrew Ng, founder of DeepLearning.ai from the US. Himanshu Palsule, the Chief Executive Officer of Cornerstone On Demand, also from the US. Thank you very much for joining us here. Andrew, let's get started. I think a lot of the headlines scream catastrophic disruption. What is going to happen as far as entry-level jobs are concerned? Will it be a white-collar bloodbath, so to speak? Let me get your view on that to start with.
I think the entry-level jobs are there, and many businesses just can't find enough skilled entry-level workers with the right AI skills. Unfortunately, I feel like higher education, which I love and I think is a great force for the good, is failing many fresh college graduates by preparing them for the jobs of 2022 before modern AI, rather than the jobs of 2026 and beyond. We're already seeing that in coding, for example. I'm not going to ever hire another engineer again that doesn't know how to use AI to help them code. Because AI tools have advanced so rapidly in software engineering and coding, coding is, I think, a harbinger of what will happen in other sectors as well as tools enter other sectors. And I feel a lot of urgency to revise the academic curricula to give the students they need to be job ready, because the jobs are there.
The jobs are there, the skills gap continues to exist, and it is only going to widen if we don't do something about the way that our education system functions. That's the point you're making.
Yep, absolutely.
Minister, let me come to you now with that, because that's exactly the problem that you're trying to address at the UAE, and you've actually brought in AI as part of the curriculum K-12.
Yes, absolutely. So that's a very interesting point when it comes to higher education, which is the skilled workforce. I'll address that first and then take it back, because we have a bit more time in preparing people to come to the workforce when it comes to the K-12. When we're talking about higher education needs to start infusing AI, and we do have that in the UAE, starting to work with some of our universities to provide them with skills and the necessary tool sets to be able to advance with that. Right now, it's starting with basic AI literacy in higher education, but that needs to improve in subject level. So based on the subject level that each student in higher education is currently going through and the degree that they're pursuing, there needs to be a better tackling on the tools that today exist in the market and the rapid evolution of the tools. Now, how we're taking it to K-12, we're the first public school system globally to mandate K-12 AI literacy for all of our students. So today we have more than 280,000 students taking AI literacy, at least once every 2 weeks. The core of the curriculum is the following. Students need to understand how to use AI, when to use it, what tools to use to be able to support them in their learning and to be able to advance that. We've also instilled new training for educators on how to use existing AI tools to ease their job and be able to do their job more effectively and more efficiently and free up some of their time that is used on day-to-day work. We also need to relook the outcomes of the student themselves. And that's more about the broader long-term impact and changes that need to happen in the education system.
You know, that's very interesting what you point out, that the UAE is the first country in the world to mandate AI curriculum. And why did you feel the need to do that?
We looked at social media. Students have used social media extensively, haven't been given a code of ethics on how to use it effectively. What are the challenges of not using it in the correct mechanisms? And we've seen adverse effects on both their personalities, their social well-being, and their social interactions as well. We saw that that might happen in their cognitive ability, in the development of their cognitive ability when it comes to AI. So it was very important for us to design a curriculum for them to understand how to use it. We've embedded subtly critical thinking also within the realms of AI. So the class goes as follows. A student uses AI, for example, let's talk about prompt engineering, prompting it to get information about a particular subject, let's say World War I. And they try different prompts, and the teacher speaks with them based on critical thinking on what prompt worked better, what information was not biased, what information came out in accordance to what you understand. And that's also instilling a bit of change that we need to see in the education system, which is it's no longer about providing the knowledge and information to students and asking them to repeat it back. It's more about there's a lot of information and knowledge out there. Can you pick out what is relevant? Can you understand what is construed or skewed? And are you able to bring together groups and pieces of information and knowledge to be able to get a proper outcome and analyze that properly?
Andrew, before I get Himanshu and Professor Pissarides into the conversation, I just want to go back to the point that you were making, because in a way, what we heard there from the minister addresses the issue that you were raising. Do you believe that this needs to be the way forward across different countries?
I think K-12 is an excellent time to start training people up on AI. Maybe in terms of the AI disruption of jobs at the entry level and beyond, I think the hype is beyond the reality. There have been layoffs, so on, over the past year or two. From where I'm sitting, a lot of it seems to be from overhiring from the pandemic rather than AI affected. But look into the future. I know just as an economist, a lot of my economist friends, Eric Brynjolfsson and others, have done these task-based analysis of jobs, where you take a job, break it down into tasks, and figure out what AI can or cannot do. And it turns out for many jobs, maybe AI could do 30, 40% of the job. That means we still need people to do that 60, 70%. But it is also true that someone that knows how to use AI will replace someone that doesn't, even if AI itself won't replace a person. So getting through the hype to give people the skills they need is critical. And I would just add one asterisk to what I said, which is, whereas for most jobs, you still need people to do 60, 70%, there's a small minority of jobs where AI can indeed do almost 100% of it. So those jobs will run into trouble. I'm worried about the translators. I'm worried about the voice actors. We're about the call center operators. And for those people, we actually have an obligation, I think, as society, to a moral obligation to take care of them. Because just because someone's job is going away does not mean they deserve to be thrown onto the street. And so the education system, upskilling, I feel like we need to get that right as well.
I think the moral obligation that you speak of is an important but a complex issue that will have to be dealt with contextually in different jurisdictions. But Professor, let me come to you on the hype versus reality. And you know, where we see these screaming headlines of so many jobs gone on account of AI. To Andrew's point, a lot of this could potentially have been because of overhiring through the pandemic, especially as far as the tech companies are concerned. You've been speaking with tech CEOs today. What are they telling you about entry-level jobs?
Yeah, I'm afraid Andrew has stolen my thunder now. That's exactly what I was going to say. You see, like, I mean, I was going to say, I don't want to spoil the Davos party where everyone is AI, ho, ho, you know. If you look at the labor market carefully, what do people do? You know, the young people, if you like, entry level, although there are entry level people who are not young. About half, I think Andrew said 40%, well, we'll take 40%, will never use AI. They don't need AI now. They go into health and care, hospitality, retail. These are usually not university graduates, though, so I don't want to tell Minister Amiri that they're wasting their time training, because she was also obviously talking about universities. So half the workforce is out. Of what remains, most of them will need to use AI, but their jobs are not threatening. AI cannot do what the job will be doing. In contrast to that, what they will be required to do by their companies is that they will apply some AI skills that they have, and the company will give them AI, will invest in AI, and they will become more productive. They will do things faster, better quality, and everything like that. Now, those people are usually university graduates, and they're the ones that are benefiting from university education in AI, and I think at LSE we're moving in that direction too. We've been talking to Anthropic and so on. Then what remains are the people that, if not 100%, like Andrew said, maybe it's 80% that they can do it. And usually those, and the reason you get to hear so much about those is that they're usually in the professions. It's the way, if you look at law, accounting, I mean, those professions were structured more or less by the British in the 19th century mainly. And they did it according to the education that existed at the time. If you have usually a son, but let's say a child, a son or a daughter, what would they do? They would go to a private, what they call public school, but essentially private boarding school. They will come out, they will go to Oxford and Cambridge, they will get classics education, like Boris Johnson, or something similar, and then they will enter one of the professions, law, accounting, where they will get their pupillage and their training, and gradually they become partners. That's the one that is hit most, because that's what generative AI and the large language models can do. And in fact, it's about time they got a kick in the backside and they reform the professions. I mean, you cannot live in the 19th century English structure of education and professions.
To borrow from Professor Pissarides very eloquently, who is going to get a kick in the backside?
So, Shereen, you talked about ironies. I think the greatest irony of our time is we are leaving behind a generation that is actually the most capable of implementing AI, and we are spending time reskilling middle management and senior management, which is harder. So I think, Minister, the model that you have, I would say absolutely every school needs to follow that model. I think when you get junior people at work, I think it will be a mistake to introduce them to autonomous, repeatable roles, because they're going to go away. I would focus on skills that involve judgment, decision-making, context, because those are going to be more important. I would rather have a junior financial analyst or a legal analyst coming in and spend their time examining the output of an AI tool rather than competing with AI. So as we look at these job structures, I believe what these young adults coming in, our kids, our grandkids, need to sort of look at this T-shaped model, where the breadth is get good enough with AI, and the depth is pick a domain and then get damn good in that, specialize in that domain, because that is going to become irreplaceable. And then for companies hiring these people, create those environments, create those apprenticeships, create the area where they come in, especially if you have this education system K through 12, where they're AI fluent. I think we need to trust these people who are born digitally native in being able to adopt to this. So, I'm very optimistic, but I think we need a fundamental reset in not just education, but in hiring, onboarding, and training of these people.
And I want to pick up from what Professor Pissarides just said, that, are we largely talking about what's likely to happen in the tech sector or tech-affiliated sectors? Will sectors like hospitality, healthcare, and so on and so forth be as impacted by what we're speaking?
I think so. If you heard what Yuval Harari had to say on stage, he said, any job that involves words, language, and numbers is going to get disrupted. because words, language, and numbers, the cohort information available to an AI agent, is far going to surpass our ability to compete with that. So whether you're a lawyer who has to read all the precedent books from the past, you're a financial analyst who has to understand complex models, you're a healthcare worker who has to understand efficacy of medicine, pharmaceuticals, and diseases and all of that, don't compete with your corpus of knowledge with what's going to be available there. Highlight the fact that context, judgment, and decision-making is going to be more important. So I respectfully disagree that while...
I love the fact that there's disagreement because that's the whole point of the debate, yes.
You mentioned word. I'll also add images because it also influences a lot the healthcare sector.
Yeah.
In diagnosis.
Very well
as
said.
well.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you're waiting to jump in.
No,
Go right ahead.
I agree. I agree both with Harari and sorry, I didn't pick up your name. Yeah, if it involves words, where the disagreement is, and I'm sure you're going to agree when you hear it, is that these jobs that do not use AI, they are not words jobs. If you become a nurse, your skill is not that you know how to put words together. You need empathy. You need to understand the person you're looking after. As Harari said, we have absolutely no evidence that AI has any feelings at all. If you go into the health sector, you don't need to have any kind of feeling. You need to have any special feelings. And by the time AI gets there, the current generation of nurses will no longer be there. It will be their grandchildren. Go into hospitality industry with these people who serve us out here, who give us those amazing espressos and other things that they serve. Is their skill putting words together? Of course not. Their skill is knowing how to treat the customer. I mean, you know, here we're a sort of, not imprisoned, a captive customer, but if they're going to attract you to go to their restaurant or their hotel or something, they need to feel that they understand you, they understand the customer. They're nice. It's not a word. If you put an AI agent at reception and you put the really nice people next door to another hotel, which one would you go?
Well,
24/7, no vacation, no paid leave, I don't know. That's probably the CEO. Absolutely right.
But Andrew, let's double down on the point that's being made there. And, you know, we're talking about a world of agents. We're talking about a world where digital labor and human labor will coexist. In an environment like that, how do corporate leaders look at staffing? How do corporate leaders look at the challenges of workforce management? You know, you talk to CEOs. What are they telling you at this point in time? What is the dilemma that they're faced with?
So I find the term digital labor challenging because I'm the one that coined the term agentic AI, so we saw this coming quite early. But digital labor is a challenging concept because AI software is so different than humans that analogizing them to needing food and water and pay leave and so on creates problematic analogies. When I speak of CEOs, I think the two biggest challenges, one is upskilling, bring people along with us, because ultimately it's not the technology by itself, it's the people we bring with us that will implement the technology that drives the change. In fact, my cousin Farouche does a lot of work on skill measuring to help people figure out the skill gaps and what they need to learn. So that's one. And the second thing is to the business leaders, I find that we've done this let 1,000 flowers bloom, bottom-up innovation thing, and for the most part, it's led to a lot of nice little things, but nothing transformative for businesses. And what I'm seeing for businesses is to execute the more transformative projects, the problem with a lot of bottom-up innovation is if you look at the set of tasks needed to create value in the business, a lot of bottom-up innovation ends up with point solutions that takes one step out of five, makes it more efficient. You get these 5-10% efficiency gains, which are nice, but not transformative. But it's usually when the bottom-up innovation meets top-down, broader view, then you can redesign the entire workflow from scratch, and that's what's creating more business growth. So actually here this week at Davos, speaking of a lot of CEOs, they're thinking about how to go beyond the bottom-up point solutions to taking the broader view to business process redesign, and I think that will finally realize a lot of the growth that AI has been promising.
But are we closer to that? Because the discussion and the debate and, you know, the conversations that I've still been having with people, it is still pretty much bottom up. It's still efficiency and optimization. It's not so much transformation just yet. So do we still have time before we see this kind of transformative impact for governments to be able to skill people, for corporations to figure out what they intend to do as far as the corporate structure is concerned, or are we out of time?
We still have time. Frankly, this workflow redesign is really hard. Maybe one example that's been around for a little bit. Take underwriting loans. There are multiple steps needed to do that. You have to do the loan approval, preliminary approval, diligence, execute the loan, manage and give out the loan over. So there are multiple things needed to create value. So what some people said is, oh, why not use AI to do the preliminary loan approval, which is nice. But if you take this whole process and make one step a bit more efficient, you get this, nice small cost savings. But what some businesses realize is, if I get AI to automate this step, what I can do is build a brand new product where instead of just the cost savings, I'm going to say, I'm going to get back to you on your loan approval in 10 minutes instead of 1 week. So this is a materially different product, and it drives business growth. But it takes that broader view, where it's not someone automating one piece of the puzzle, but rethinking all the steps needed to create value, to redesign that. That's what's driving growth. And frankly, this is really hard. We spent a lot of time with CEOs. One large organization sent us almost 300 project ideas and asked my friend and I at AI Aspire to sort out which are the ones that can drive strategic value. And we find this work really difficult and really intellectually deep. So I think it'll be some time before businesses get to these, not the cost savings, but the significant growth opportunities.
Absolutely, before they move on to the transformation stage. But Himanshu, again, I want to double down on this. What are companies telling you? And how do you believe the workforce is likely to be restructured in the near term?
Yeah, so the skill shortage is very real, and it's driven also by an unprecedented amount of automation. You have these complex dialysis machines sitting idle because nurses cannot get trained fast enough. We have a customer that manufactures aircraft and the new avionics. There's no maintenance staff doing that. We spent a decade worrying about data flows, and it's Davos, so let's talk a little bit about cross-border. And that we came up with data sovereignty, data governance, we build laws and all of that. We better start thinking about skills in the same way, because there could be a coder in Nigeria, there could be an analyst in Riyadh who has better skills than the people you may have just hired, and we need to be able to figure a way to fill those gaps quickly. That skills divide is going to keep getting wider, especially with more automation, more AI, and it's up to us to try to close that divide. The concern I have is, depending on, as you said, it's going to be a fascinating week here in Davos. Depending on where people retrench to, we may take a bad problem and make it worse. And then you have untethered AI that's unfairly used across geographies. That is my biggest worry. As a global company, we hire people from all over the world. Half our teams are outside the United States. And we really need to start thinking about this global skilling. We work with the Abu El Gharer Foundation in Dubai. And companies like that need to come to the table to have this discussion with businesses.
Well, easier mobility of talent, that is an increasingly large challenge in the world that we live in at this point in time, with policies becoming more inward and more protectionist, including those that involve the mobility of people. But that's a separate conversation, that's a separate debate. I want to go back to the point that Andrew made about moral obligation, and I want to understand this from your perspective as somebody in government minister. The moral obligation, of course, is to skill, to educate. But in a situation where jobs are not probably growing fast enough, or people who may have been left behind on account of the disruptions in specific sectors, what is then the obligation of the government in that situation?
It is the obligation of government to skill. And we do have a program that was launched at the back of COVID to skill certain individuals within society to be able to start filling in jobs within our private sector, and ensuring that the private sector opens up new jobs to people to be able to fit into it. So the government is footing the bill to reskilling people. But there's another part of it, and I'll go back to my portfolio within the K-12 education system. Governments are also have to also build a future workforce that can reskill intrinsically. So teaching them the ability to learn and relearn and unlearn and continuous learning, that we've been putting it as an objective for decades now, as an outcome of the education system, needs to be a top priority. Otherwise, governments who would need to continuously reskill people will be footing the bill more and more and more down the line if it's not intrinsically built into the workforce.
You know, Professor Pissarides, while we talk a lot about AI and the impact it's likely to have as far as the jobs market is concerned, I don't think that we can see it in isolation. We'll have to see it in the overall economic context, where we are seeing geopolitical risks, we're seeing geo-economic confrontation, geo-economic fragmentation. There's a retreat from globalization as we've come to accept it, as we've come to know it. That, in addition to AI, are we headed into a structurally disruptive environment which will change the way that the labor market operates?
Well, I'm afraid we are. It's an unusual circumstance that we're facing now, because we have the globalization shock and we have the deterioration in geopolitics, which obviously affects the location of companies. So in addition to companies now needing to know how am I going to produce something and what skills do I need, they also need to worry about where am I going to produce this, what kind of supply chains am I going to use. And that's a very difficult balance to bring up. That's very much a company's problem now, and of course it will not be good for their productivity or for world economic growth if each one of them says, "Okay, I'm going to get my home retrenched, stick home," and all that. Which is, I don't know if you've been to Macron's talk a bit earlier. He was talking very much about Europe needs to get together, get deeper, integrate more, do a single market, single capital market. It's all because of that. You know, can we trust anyone outside Europe, given what we are seeing, behaviors east and west from where we are? You know, that it's a very, very difficult problem. But from the workers' point of view, they can never lose if they do exactly what the minister said. You have to learn how to learn in future. Don't think that you are going to acquire a skill at school and maybe a little bit of training later, and then you're going to get into a job and you're always going to do that skill. I mean, it's partly universities that need to reform, actually, so I can be. Well, I have no more power to reform my university. But essentially what they need to do is to teach a variety of skills to their students in addition. Maybe extend, you know, like we have 3 years of university, undergraduate education in Britain, extend it to 4 maybe, and use it in combination with companies, with industry. So you have internships, or you might call them, you know, internships or and anything else.
Apprenticeships,
apprenticeship or training. But the idea is that the university learns from the industry what skills are needed and teaches different skills. So when they graduate, they have a composition of skills to show in their portfolio. They have their degree, obviously, and they have experience. They have work experience, because the most common complaint that you hear now from young people, graduates coming out of school, is that everyone wants experience, but they don't offer me a job because I didn't have experience. How am I going to acquire the experience if they don't offer me a job? Get your experience at university.
Well, you know, and Andrew, I want you to come in on that and also build on the need and the possibility for a much more robust public-private partnership, a collaboration between industry, academia, and you know, to be able to address the skills gap that we speak of, but also identify the skills for the jobs of the future.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is because AI technology is still evolving rapidly, the skills that are going to be needed in the future are not yet clear today, hence lifelong learning, the ability to keep on learning those skills in the future that we do not yet know today. But there's one skill that is already emerging that's very clear to me that I want to mention that may be controversial, which is it's time to get everyone to learn to code. And what we're already seeing in Silicon Valley is that you shouldn't code the old way. You know, don't write code by hand. Get AI to do it for you. But we're already seeing in Silicon Valley that not just the software engineers, but the marketers, HR professionals, the financial analysts, and so on, the ones that know how to code are much more productive than the ones that don't, and that gap is growing. So my best recruiters, they don't read resumes by hand. They write code to screen resumes for them. When one of my marketers wants to launch a new marketing campaign or a website or whatever, they don't wait around for an engineer to build an app or a website for them. My marketer builds it themselves. My CFO no longer, spends hours clicking through documents to do routine processing, and nor does she have to go around to evaluate lots of vendors to see who we need to pay tons of money to for some little automation. Her team, they write code themselves to automate financial processing. So I'm already seeing very clearly in Silicon Valley, my business and many other businesses, a noticeable and growing productivity gap between people, not software engineers, but people that know how to use AI to build custom software for them, and people that don't. And maybe if I'm wrong in 2 years, you can all come and yell at me, but I believe this will spread. And so I think there's an imperative to basically teach everyone to learn to code.
Can I add to that?
Yes, so that's an important one. Andrew Ng saying that everyone needs to learn to code. That's his big prescription here. Davos 2026. Yes, Himanshu, go ahead.
Yeah, the other adjustment, a lot of the computer science graduates who are graduate immediately thinking they're going to get a job at a Meta or an Amazon or a Google or some company like that. Those jobs are gone. And then there's a lot of disappointment where they wait for months and in some cases years waiting for those jobs to come back. At the same time, there are HR departments, finance departments, sales department looking for AI skill set. And these people could get a hero status within that. We face that challenge today. When we ask our HR CHRO that, we don't want recruiters, we want all the recruiting to be done using agents and bots. Well, someone has to code that. And when they go out and look for people, they don't find those computer science graduates because they're waiting for their next big job to come from that big tech box. So that's the reset I'm talking about, that once that starts happening, I think you'll see a more even playing field in the world of skills and jobs.
Yeah, so don't wait for the big tech job. Go outside of that universe as well. So I think there is a mentality and a mindset reset that's also required for those who are coming into the workforce. I'm going to throw this open. 2 questions. I can see a hand and many hands already being raised. Wonderful. Can we get a microphone across to the lady, please? Thank you so much.
Hello, I am Derby Chukudi, one of the global shapers that are present in Davos this week, and I'm based in Hong Kong. And one question I have is, if everybody learns how to code, and I'm just thinking from an economic standpoint, where the whole concept of comparative advantage and how we're able to still showcase or focus on areas where we're either like very skilled or have leverage versus everyone trying to be the coder. And then the second piece of the question is, what does the future of work look like if the typical jobs, like the big tech jobs, are gone, or entry-level jobs, as you think about it, are no longer? What is the future? How should the young people start thinking about things? There's a concept of the new economy, creators economy, but is that sustainable enough to build a career that can span through different phases or industries?
Thank you. Andrew, would you like to start?
Sure. To comparative advantage, coding skills goes really deep. So I can tell you, my most productive developers, they're actually not fresh college grads. They have 10, 20 years of experience in coding and are on top of AI. It turns out there's one tier down from them is the fresh college grads that really know how to use AI. And then I'll tell you, one tier down from that is the people with 10 years of experience, but maybe they're at a comfortable job and have not learned to embrace AI. So actually quite a few times, my teams have voted to hire a fresh college grad that really knows AI over, like a full stack developer or something that for some reason is still coding like it's 2022 before modern AI. And then unfortunately, the least productive that I would never hire are the fresh college grads that also do not know AI. So I feel like my marketer does not code nearly as well as the really good developers that I know with 10, 20 years of experience. So there is that deep expertise experience that still makes a huge difference.
Let me give a personal example where you sort of debunk this myth on what everyone's a coder really means. So I have a son who graduated with a degree in cognitive science, and he's now working in a research lab building behavioral models. But he uses Python for that. he never learned coding. And, you know, with a father who sort of professes on proper education and proper coding style, he uses ChatGPT to generate code. He examines the code, and then he wants it. So is he a computer science engineer? Is he a you know, a software coder? Or is he a cognitive scientist? I think with the concept of everyone codes, it doesn't mean you're writing, you know, necessarily complex, algorithmic, structured code. Now you have the ability to get started, jump in and write code in any domain. And I think that sea change is going to start impacting jobs. And when people start accepting that, then you could be in any profession being able to contribute to coding without being a traditional coder.
So dads are under threat from ChatGPT as well. Yes, sir, go ahead. You had a question? Yeah, to the lady here, and then I'll get to you, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you for sharing the any insights and any information. I'm the founder of Waffle, which is the to close the gender gap in tech industry in Japan, and also we engage in policy recommendation in Japan. So my question is, what do you believe is the appropriate level and depth of AI education required at each educational stage, elementary school and junior high and senior high and school and university? And one more question is, how should a systematic continuity and progression in AI education be structured from elementary school through university? And I want to ask Sarah and Andrews, please.
Sir, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you the basic outcomes that we've tackled. Do I have an answer of how it needs to evolve? No. Our AI curriculum is a living curriculum because of that, because it needs to transform as we're moving forward. But I'll take you stage by stage. If you're talking about kindergarten students, it's very important for them to understand, and we don't call it AI for children, we call it robots. That there are robots that do things, and the robots that do things need adult supervision for them to be able to interact with it. As they're moving older, especially for younger kids who are getting exposed, it's very important for them to understand how does AI, in a very simple way, how does AI work, which takes us back to machine learning. So we teach them machine learning, which is AI builds a perspective based on the information that it's been fed in. If it's fed in single type of information, and we do that with the typical green apples, and is a red apple an apple or not. Then you move on to middle school and high school, and that's where you start building in the critical thinking element. Does it align with your ethics? Does it align with your values? Is the response you've gotten or the prompt that you've provided sufficient enough for it to give you the depth of knowledge that you require? In what context are you supposed to use it? In one context, is it really plagiarism and you're not putting the effort in? Then comes in the rethinking of what an educator needs to be exposed to at different stages of their life to be able to tackle AI. And this is something that you've all mentioned, which is the expertise level. Mm-hmm. There needs to be a minimum level of knowledge required for people, especially today, to be able to use AI effectively and be able to use it as an effective tool. So what we're focusing on and doubling down on is students having a core body of knowledge and then building on harnessing those skills. I've mentioned critical thinking as one, resilience as another, and adaptability. And resilience and adaptability and critical thinking together actually builds the ability to learn and relearn within students. Mm-hmm. And that's more of a long-term transformation of an education system that needs to be built in, that has so many different elements that will take time and pieces within the system to take us out of the box of what education looks like today into what it needs to look like to give us the outcomes that we're looking for.
Yes, could we have the microphone? We have about 6 minutes left, so I'll try and take some more questions and come back to Andrew if there's time left. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your perspectives. We do a lot of work as well on assessing AI's impact on the workforce, and we do understand that there are some jobs that are likely to sit in the augmentation category and others which are at the risk of being displaced. My question, and keen to get your perspectives on it, is when human capital policies typically were designed, it was designed technically for humans, but we are now in an era of AI, which basically means humans will interact with robots, agentic AI. A broad question is, how do you see the human capital policies evolve, be it on the recruitment, career progression, retention, in an AI-enabled world?
Professor, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it would change because the labor market is restructuring in the way you use skills are restructuring. But I mean, agentic AI is creating jobs so far. You know, it's like having an assistant, and you become more productive and you produce more, and companies they bring it in first, expand and all that. So I don't really see any big reforms that you have to do now for the future. The important ones are now in education, and I want to go back to how much do you teach of AI and all that and programming. I agree entirely that everyone should learn programming skills in the way that every kid in England has to learn French. Do you think they ever use it? Or do they, or would they ever do as good a translation as AI can do from English to French or French to English? No, but they learn it. They learn Latin. I've got a son in school in England. It's compulsory to do Latin. Let them do programming as well. He's doing programming as well, actually, in my science school, but maybe it's a more progressive school. So that when you go out and get into a job, when you come across people speaking foreign languages, you don't panic the way that so many kids that come out panic. That's the point of teaching a foreign language. And when you see AI, they don't panic. Because they've got the programming and they know more about it. So that's why the reform should take place, combined with experience that I was mentioning before. Once they're in a company, then their human capital will be augmented all the time because they will be learning new skills as new technology is arriving. But that's always existed in history. You know, when people driving cars of horses carrying things in the late 19th century were told there is this wonderful thing now that it uses internal combustion and drives, and give up your horse and come and drive it. It was a much bigger shock to them than what we're facing now. And yet within 10 years, horses disappeared and roads were congested with cars. Well, maybe 20 years, but
Can I add one point?
Yes, please.
thanks to the reform.
A lot of the policies today are static and progressional. You hire an employee gets promoted. You have events that happen in a very sequential manner. If you think about it from the beginning of time, output of work was always a human times efficiency times productivity. We spent 100 years improving efficiency and productivity. For the first time, we are changing human and adding an agent to that. So all these policies now need to be re-examined because they're not going to move linearly. There's going to be a lot more disruption. And again, there were several speakers today who touched on that. We are a believer, again, at Cornerstone, that this people graph has to be very dynamic, and that's putting a lot of pressure on organizations around the world.
Well,
Can I add to why
please.
I think policy is so important? About 2 weeks ago, my team, we do a lot of person in the street interviews. We spoke of a coffee shop owner in heart of Silicon Valley, Mountain View, California, who was physically shaking because he was so angry at AI, with my team being representatives, and he was almost yelling at us for AI destroying the livelihoods of his artist friends. I know here at WEF, we're all very AI positive, pro-AI, we see the business value, also in the future. I think many people underestimate the degree to which our sector is mistrusted and sometimes even hated. One good news is, I think Edelman ran a study showing that the more people learn about AI, the less they distrust it and the more they like it. And so to gain societal acceptance of AI, to let us unlock the things that actually move society forward, I think this educational piece and the policy piece of it is really important.
Yes, building on trust as well is important. Yes, I'm going to give you an opportunity to get the microphone, and that'll be the last question that we take for this evening.
Thank you very much for your insights in learning. I'm Kian, the founder and CEO of Workera. I think if we look at our skill sets, we'd see that part of our skills are durable. They will be useful in a long time. And I agree with Professor Eng that coding is becoming a durable skill now. But other skills are perishable, and they change so fast with a half-life that is so low. So my questions for you all is, how do you personally keep up with the change and acquire those perishable skills that are going to go away even 6 months from now?
Himanshu or Minister?
I would repeat,
yes, Professor.
I would repeat what Professor said so he doesn't kick me in the backside. Is the art of learning is learning how you learn And as long as you're good at that, what you're going to learn is going to change. That cone of uncertainty is so broad right now that not only do we not know what the next jobs are, we don't know what outcomes those jobs are going to generate. So it's very hard to teach a student about that.
Yeah.
It's easier to teach a student how to learn what's the area of discipline and all the soft skills that you heard.
Yeah, people specialize in different things. By now, I have the courage to tell anyone who's going to ask me questions, don't ask me anything about this, that, that. And if they do, I say out.
Yes.
You cannot venture an answer to everything and expect to be listened to and be taken seriously. Yeah. You have to admit that there are some things you don't know.
Yes.
I run deeplearn.ai, world's leading AI training platform, the chairman of Coursera. So I actually eat a lot of our own dog food. I find that taking our courses actually helps me, keep up with the cutting edge and all the latest developments.
All right. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have to close this session. But thank you to our panel for joining us here this evening. Thank you very much for your participation. This is an ongoing debate. I don't think we have the answers yet. There's going to be many more questions, and hopefully we'll be back in Davos again to address some of those. From all of us here, goodbye, and many thanks for watching.
Thank you.